Next up, kind of adding on to this theme, I want to bring on Simon to tell you all about interoperability. So please welcome Simon from LayerZero.
All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Simon Baksys. I am the VP of Business Development at LayerZero Labs, the market-leading interoperability protocol connecting 90 or so chains and counting. It's good to see some familiar faces here today, although I can't see much over the slide, and also a lot of new faces, and thank you to ETH Global and Pragma for putting together this excellent event. And my talk is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a bit more zoomed out. I was told that I can't show LayerZero as much as I'd like, so we're going to talk about principles and really just remember why we're here. And truthfully, I woke up this morning in South Florida and thought about the 6-hour flight to San Francisco, as well as the red-eye flight back tonight that I have to get on. And it was not on the top of my favorite things to do by any means. And certainly a tough one to explain to your partner as well, right? Like, she never understands why I have to be on a plane every week and go to some exotic location to talk about crypto and to do another conference. But then I kind of sat down and as I was kind of drinking my coffee, feeling almost like a high schooler, like thinking of how to get out of class, like how do I not take this trip? I thought about my team that put together this lovely presentation and that designed it. I thought about LayerZero and what we stand for and the vision and mission, the principles of this industry. And I thought about why I joined this company in the first place. And it's because we care. We truly, deeply, deeply care. And I think it's an important point because I think we ought to all care more. And so today I'll talk about why crypto needs Interop that cares, but also why I think we all need to care just a bit more. So starting with how we got here. This is not meant to be education. I think probably most people have seen this and know this. But I think it's meant to be a reminder of why we're here. So in 2008, October, we got this wonderful thing that's called Bitcoin. And it was absolutely revolutionary and set out to change finance forever, and it's doing exactly that. But at the moment, in 2008, it wasn't perceived as revolutionary, right? It was perceived as radical. And it took a really long time to change the hearts and minds of people to look at it as not radical, but revolutionary. In fact, Larry Fink, just a couple of days ago on the BlackRock earnings call, said, we view Bitcoin as an asset, as its own asset class. Although merely 4 years ago, he called it money laundering. And why is that, right? It took a while to actually change those hearts and minds. And the reason it was looked at as radical was because it introduced new core principles that weren't normal at the time. But Bitcoin stuck through it. It adhered to those core principles, and it got to where it is today because Bitcoin cared. In 2015, July, we got Ethereum, sort of the peer-to-peer programmable money, smart contracts, right, where code is law, where with a push of a button and without a centralized intermediary, you can move around hundreds of billions of dollars of value. That, too, took a long time to transition from, say, radical or unsafe or untrusted to something that is now used every single day and is appreciated every single day by more and more people. And maybe it didn't take as long as it took Bitcoin, and maybe it's thanks to Bitcoin for paving that path, but it still took a long time. But it adhered to core principles that this industry was built on. Ethereum cared, Vitalik cared, and now you have two of the best examples in crypto of true decentralization that actually adheres to the principles and the ethos of this entire industry. Probably the only two, to be honest. And in 2022, you got LayerZero. You're welcome. LayerZero. the peer-to-peer transport layer, the Internet of blockchains, as we like to call it. And that, too, may take a few more years to gain the traction that it probably deserves. But it's also something that will adhere to those core principles, and we're going to talk about those principles in just a second. We as a company cannot compromise on those. We as an industry cannot compromise on those, and we ought to care, and LayerZero does care. So what do we actually care about? Like, what are those founding principles? Vitalik said, namely, to make at least a part of the Ethereum ecosystem actually be the permissionless, decentralized, censorship-resistant, open-source ecosystem that we originally came to build. He said that in 2023. Like we kind of look at this history book and it's like, oh, well, yeah, of course, we know that. But he said that in 2023 because we often, I think, forget and we start sacrificing and compromising on these principles in order to extract value, maybe make a token go up, whatever it may be, but not actually truly build amazing tech. And frankly, the principles and caring about those principles nowadays is like half the battle to actually making something great, to building something great, to building something that will impact the world. And so those principles are permissionless, right? We all know it. We all know that word. There's a conference named after it. Anyone should be able to use the technology. Anyone should be able to access it. And anyone should be able to build on it without compromise. It should be sufficiently decentralized, just like how Bitcoin and Ethereum are, to the point where other principles come into play, like censorship resistance. The technology primitive, the layer of that technology, should be censorship resistant. It cannot be censored. No one should ever be able to turn the internet off, and no one should be able to turn this off. And the last one that's not named here by Vitalik, but it is named by us and we truly care about, is immutability. The ability to change something by a single party or upgrade something by a single party introduces risk, it introduces malicious intent, and it can create a lot of problems. And that is not the slide that it was supposed to go to. It's supposed to be here. And we're familiar with those problems, right? Who here is OG enough that actually got goxed by Mt. Gox? Don't see a lot of hands. I did. My friend in, I think maybe 2012, gave me a birthday present, which was however many Litecoins that was on Gox and disappeared. It was like $10,000. But in current prices, it's $45 billion worth of value that was lost, which is a lot. We all know our favorite exchange, FTX, and what happened there. Wormhole, hundreds of millions of dollars. Multi-chain, hundreds of millions of dollars. It has almost become normal. Like, we have normalized these black swan events. We've become accustomed to them. We've almost grown numb to them. But that doesn't mean that it's normal. What normal is Aave. What normal is Uniswap. What normal is, I'm happy to say, is LayerZero. Long-term strategic thinking over short-term greed will win 10 times out of 10. And we see that every single day. And you see the other ones that didn't have that thinking and where they ended up. So how does this relate to Interop? And my slides are a little out of order, so I'm going to come back to this, which is there's absolutely no arguing about it that the reality today is multi-chain. Like, just you can't disagree with that, right? We have layer 1s, we have layer 2s, we have layer 3s, we have orbit chains, we have super chains, we have subnets, we have supernets, we have roll-ups, we have permissionless, private, public, you name it. We have a name for it. And that's a fine world to live in. In fact, obviously for us, that's good. That's what we're in the business of doing, is solving the multi-chain reality. And in some cases, right, you compromise for speed or control or privacy or cost or value extraction or whatever that may be. And that's okay. But it does create problems. It does create fragmentation. So if you look at the ecosystem today, the blockchain ecosystem, users are spread out all over the place, right? Be that Base, Arbitrum, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, Ronin, Polygon, it doesn't matter. Users are everywhere, value is everywhere. And for the most part, it is actually not as interoperable as it should be. It is not as modular as it should be, and it is not as composable as it should be. There's a reason why we have 17 different versions of USDC wrapped on a bunch of different chains. There's a reason why we have now, I don't know, the 17th wrapped Bitcoin token that launched. I think Kraken came out with the newest one today. There's a reason why you have RWAs being tokenized on chains and then failing because they don't find the liquidity or the ecosystem or the user bases and they can't get out of it and so they die. There's a lot of these problems that exist. And those problems can be solved with good interoperability, and they can be solved with technology that actually adheres to the core principles that this entire industry was built on. And so you don't want innovation in silos, right? We have today unique ecosystems, unique architectures, unique use cases. That's great. That's sort of the value prop of crypto and Web3 is you want all those things to exist, but you also want them to work together. You have limited network effects, right? A network's value is usually tied to the number of users and the amount of liquidity. And we all talk about 1 billion users and how we want to get that in crypto, but it's hard to get to 1 billion users if everyone is fighting for a tiny portion of the same pie rather than growing the pie itself. You have user experience barriers, the most commonly pointed to issue on any panel that you go to, right? Oh, why doesn't crypto get adoption? Well, the user experience is terrible. Yeah, it is, right? You have multiple wallets, you have multiple interfaces, multiple tokens, you have multiple standards. And again, part of the value in crypto, but at the same time, in my opinion, I don't think we're opinionated enough. Everyone in crypto sort of lands on this concept of like, we're super agnostic, right? You build anything, no one's gonna have an opinion, and the best tech is gonna win. And to some extent, that's true. Some of the best tech has won. But to some extent, I think we should be more opinionated, right? Like, we should crown the best tech. We should make a choice. We should say, well, this thing is better than the other, and I'm gonna use this thing and not that thing because that thing gave me $10 million more. And I think that's going back to the principles and why it's important to adhere to them and to have long-term thinking on what you're actually building. You have scalability constraints for developers. Couldn't be more true, right? Interoperability, the lack of standards, creates that constraint and creates this tech that, again, is built in silos, that has a terrible user experience, and everyone is fighting for a small piece of the pie. So when we think at LayerZero how to build the best interop in the world, how to build the next internet, how to build the internet of blockchains, we go back to these core principles. We go back to caring. We live and breathe every single day the principles that our tech should be permissionless, that the primitive layer of technology that we are building should be permissionless, it should be truly censorship resistant, and it should be truly immutable. We also live and breathe and say, well, hey, like, we're building this primitive, any application built on top should have full customization and configurability on what is centralized and what is censorship resistant or not. At the application layer, totally okay. You should own your own security, you should own your own users, you decide what to do, but the underlying primitive, similar to the internet, similar to Ethereum, similar to Bitcoin, should always adhere to those principles to achieve what we all set out here to achieve. And we live and breathe standards. This goes back to the opinion topic. There are so many standards being built in this industry, but no one can actually win because everyone is too unopinionated. So how do you build standards that seamlessly create compatibility across any application and across any blockchain? And that is what we do every single day. That is what we live and breathe. And so going back to sort of why this all matters, I urge, I think, everyone here to think about those core principles, to not be short-term greedy, to have a strategic long-term outlook, care about the interop that you use, care about the technology that you build, care about being better, and care about making this entire industry better. Thank you.